To a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I'm very excited for today's episode. Very quickly, before we get started, one of your final reminders. This Friday, me and Robbie the Fire Bernstein will be up in Toronto doing stand-up shows at Park Hall. I forget the name of the theater, but comicdavesmith.com. I've been told the shows will be sold out by either tonight or midday tomorrow. So jump on them now if you want to come. Haven't been in Toronto in many years, and I'm looking forward to returning. Presuming I'm allowed, presuming that Canada is not operating under the same state of mind as the UK. Anyway, for our guest for today's show, of course, as some of you can see, I'm sure he needs no introduction with any of you guys. The longtime host and founder of the Young Turks, Cenk Uyghur. How are you, brother? Good to see you.
Great to see you, Dave. And good news, I was just up in Vancouver last month, and they did not ban me. So the Canadians still believe in freedom.
Okay, or at least some degree of it there. At least the freedom to criticize Israel and still pop in and do an event there. You know, I almost feel like I need to mention before we get started that, because I saw you've just yesterday, I watched your appearance on Piers Morgan and on Breaking Points. And it seems already when I have you on today, like we did this in response to you being kicked out or not allowed to enter the UK. But actually, me and you had been texting a few days earlier, and we were planning on doing a podcast anyway. But since this is the big news, let's start off with that. So just quickly, take us through, like, how exactly did this go down? You're going over to the UK, as far as you're concerned. You're going to go give a speech and then do an episode of the Piers Morgan, a debate on the Piers Morgan show. And how do you find out none of this will be happening?
Yeah. So I go to the airport. I got a big luggage because I was going to go to London first, South by Southwest, and then a bunch of interviews, Piers, LBC, BBC, etc. And then we were going to go to Oxford. I was going to give a speech Friday night on Oxford Speaks. And then Saturday night, Hassan and I were going to do a speech, an event together at Oxford Union. And so, and, you know, I really look forward to that. My sister, who is Hassan's mom, was especially looking forward to it. A nice moment for her where her son and her brother speak at Oxford together. We actually had to check to see if my sister and my wife were also banned because you never know, right? But obviously there's not much point in going when we're banned. But so I get to the airport and they said, well, we're having trouble with it. So let come over to the terminal with us and let's take a closer look at it. And I was like, what are they having trouble over? Because I already had a visa from having gone there last year, right? And those ETAs, as they're called, are last 2 years. And I had already double checked and I had the ETA number with me. And I figure it's just a bureaucratic issue. And then the lady goes, I've never seen this, but you're rejected by the British government. You're not allowed to enter the country, so we can't let you board the flight. And I was like, what? And I was genuinely shocked. I didn't expect that at all. And I had heard before that they were, might do something about Hassan because some Labour Party MP was complaining about him, but it didn't even occur to me that they would do anything about me. I mean, Hassan has at least said a couple of lines that are considered outrageous, right? They got nothing on me, right? because I don't say that stuff. I suggest, do I do super strong criticism of Israel? Yes, but it's all above the board and et cetera. And so I didn't even quite know, but I knew, right? I mean, it's not complicated. What's the only thing that has that kind of power and is against me, right? It's not like I have a lot of enemies and all the lobbyists hate me, but it's not like Third Way could get me banned from the United Kingdom, right? So some think tank in DC that's pro-corporate. Anyways, then 15 minutes later, I get the Times article explaining, that I've been banned for criticizing Israel, in essence.
Yeah, and so again, one of the things that's so strange about this is that, so presumably the Times is getting this information from somebody in the UK government, if they're saying, we have sources telling us this, and there's just something so strange about the fact that, okay, so the UK government will...
I'm just trying to get shrink down the stuff using my my RAM at the moment. That's the only reason why I'm not talking. tweaking a few things.
Have an idea. I mean, honestly, and you know, you texted me right afterward and you were like, brother, I wouldn't make any plans in the UK. And I mean, I don't have final plans, but I was planning on next year trying to do a theater show over there and maybe do a live Pierce episode or something. So now it's like, it is in this weird limbo. Like, well, are we not allowed to go? Or is it just because, again, it's not, I just want to be clear about this. It's not, because I just to be very clear, I don't care. Like, you're not a Jew hater. You're a critic of Israel, but you're one of the guys who, you know, bends over backward to be very clear that that's not what you're saying. But to be clear, even if you were, you still have a right to be. And I think like it's almost like I don't want to get into that game of being like, hey, we're not those guys. Because like even those guys have a right. You have a right to have whatever feelings you have about any group of people, because that's what it is to be a free human being. Like we're either free men or we're slaves. And if we're free men, we have a right to have whatever feelings we have about anyone. You don't have a right to act violently on feelings or victimize people. But anyway, it does kind of make you like wonder, is the standard that you're a critic of Israel? Because, and I know you made this point the other day, but you're like, you know, that is a larger and larger percentage of the global population, people who are critics of Israel. So what are you, like, where are you really going to draw this line? Do you have to have a big YouTube following also? You know what I mean? Like our regular people, because you might shut down 80% of England's tourism if you were to enforce the rule that any critic of Israel isn't allowed to step foot on your soil.
100%. So there's so much to go over there. So let me just go as quickly as I can through all of it. Number one, you're totally right. So like they went and told the papers. In this case, it was actually the Times of in the UK. And so first they say, hey, Cenk, you're, you know, the only stated reason publicly is that
my mistake. It was the Times of the UK, not the New York Times. So my mistake.
Yeah, it's no big deal. So they say that I'm a danger to the public order, which is kind of badass, and I kind of like it, right? So so like if I enter a room, watch out, mayhem's going to break out. So okay, I'm apparently an enemy of the crown. First, let me just say that, Dave, you're also right that who cares what they think? So, you know, Piers asked me about Valentina Gomez, who's also been banned, her having bigoted opinions about Muslims. I was like, why is she banned? Who cares? So she's a clown and it's easy to defeat her. And so why would anybody be scared or intimidated enough to ban her? Right. So it's just, let's have the marketplace of ideas, man. Some skinhead telling us to hate Jews or Muslims or whoever is not going to end the world. We've had skinheads our whole lives here. And, you know, I drive the Groypers and Israel First crazy by saying I love Jews. So I got Jewish family. What do you want me to do? Not love them? Right? Yeah. This is insanity.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Right. So like, what a crazy standard, but it's hilarious that the Groypers and Israel First agree, right? That's the most interesting part. And so they're like, blame the Jews, blame the Jews. I'm like, no, I'm not going to. That doesn't make any logical sense. You have to blame the people in favor of the ideology, not just random people who were born into a religion, right?
Well, you know, it's funny because I had literally on the show just there's a few weeks ago. So I had Nick Fuentes on the show, and every time I have him on, or the couple times I've had him on, we always get into some type of like, you know, is it Israel? It's like I say it's Israel in the lobby, you say it's Jews, and then what exactly do you mean by that? What exactly do I mean by this? And you know, as when he gets into it, he's not just saying it's the Jews, it's every single Jew. That's not exactly his case. There's something more sophisticated than that. But he'll be going like, look, it's Jewish money, it's Jewish organizations, it's this. And then I'll be like, yeah, but there's a whole bunch of Christian money and Christian organizations that are also involved in the lobby. And so it doesn't really make sense for me to character. But anyway, so I have Fuentes on the podcast, and he's like, no, it's the Jewish money. And then it was like 2 days later that John Podhoretz comes out, and after Thomas Massey's campaign, and he goes, good, it should be known that Jewish money will come get you if you are a threat to the Jewish people. And so to your point, it was very striking to me to just see that there is like, well, I'm sitting here and arguing.
Does anybody know why the Jews are the bankers? Does anybody like actually understand what is going on and why historically Jews are bankers?
there's a consensus from Commentary Magazine and Nick Fuentes that no, it is the Jews. And like, I don't know, there is something very interesting about that. And part of these things, I sometimes feel like almost we're speaking past each other, because obviously me and you wouldn't be denying that Miriam Adelson's money is like Jewish money. Like, she's a Jewish person and it's her money, but we would probably feel like calling it Jewish money just gives this implication that you're like blaming a group. Why don't we just call it Miriam Adelson's money because she's the one doing it? Is that like more or less?
Yeah, so that's actually a super important point. So let's stay on that for a second, then we'll go back to Britain. Actually, I can't.
Sure.
But, so okay. So
slick.
look, there's more than one way to look at something. You know, you say two things can be true at the same time, but actually like 8 things can be true at the same time.
Right.
So for example, with Miriam Adelson, you can call it female money. But wait, is that the defining characteristic? Right? Vegas money, Macau money, right? You can call it all of those things. And actually, if you called it Chinese money, there's a little bit more truth to that. That's actually a little bit more descriptive, because one of the main things that the Adelsons asked for from Trump in his first term was a repatriation tax holiday, which allowed them to bring back their money, which the great majority of which they make in China and Macau in their casinos there. Instead of getting a 35% tax rate, they got an 8% tax rate, and that saved them billions of dollars, which they then used to bribe Trump even more and get more things that they wanted, including for things for Israel. So my point is, you can make those choices, and those choices are kind of interesting. And the choice that I would make is to categorize them by their ideology instead of their physical features or what they were born into. So, you know, I was born Muslim, and so was some vicious terrorist, right? But we're not in the same bucket because we don't have the same ideology. You were born Jewish, and Miriam Adelson was born Jewish, but you guys are not in the same bucket because you don't have the same ideology. So if you said like Zionist money or Israel first money, et cetera, that's at least more descriptive and
Agreed.
gets towards the ideology. But if you say Jewish money, that's actually not that accurate, because none of the Jewish friends I have, which are like and family, like I say, like dozens and dozens of people that I know on a very personal level, and then hundreds of people that I know as acquaintances, almost none of them agree with Miriam Adelson. Almost none of them agree with Benjamin Netanyahu. So why are we lumping them in with Miriam, right?
Agreed.
So,
agreed. Sorry, I just to add to that, like I also do think, and I know I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know the polls would bear this out, that because obviously, look, like Miriam Adelson is Jewish, and that has something to do with her Zionist identity. It's not that the things are completely separate, but honestly, if you were to take a look at like attitudes about any of these things in America, generation is such a better predictor than Jewish, Christian, Muslim. Yep. I mean, like if you're talking about old Christian, you know, boomer Fox News, BoomerCon, you know, Christians, they're going to be way more in line with the Israel lobby. And if you're talking about 30-year-old Jews, they're like voting for Mamdani in New York City. Like they're not on board with the program. Just to back up, you know, your point there. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Prolon by El Nutra. Prolon is a plant-based nutrition program featuring soups, snacks, and beverages designed to nourish the body while keeping it in a fasting state. It triggers cellular rejuvenation and renewal by essentially tricking your body into thinking it's fasting. So here's the idea. You've heard a lot about how fasting diets are very good for you, and there's a lot of science behind that there's real benefits in fasting. But the problem with fasting is that you have to give up food. Now you can get the best of both worlds with Prolon. You can get all the benefits of fasting without actually having to give up food. And the next gen builds on the original Prolon with 100% organic soups and teas, a richer taste, and
etc. Right? And but the Israel first, reason for hiding behind Jewish civilians and using them as human shields is obvious. You weaponize anti-Semitism. You pretend that Israel hasn't done anything wrong, and that people are irrationally criticizing them just because they hate Jews. So then, whenever Israel does something wrong, they boomerang the propaganda to criticize the people that are actually blaming them for doing something wrong. They're like, no, we're not the problem. The people criticizing us are the problem because they're driven by this irrational hatred of Jewish people, right? So it is a purposeful tactic. In fact, it's a lot like Jussie Smollett, right? But just done on a macro, national, and international level. So they're going, oh my God, I can't believe it. We're the victims. But Miriam, you have how I've lost track of 30 or 40 or 70 billion or whatever she has. On what planet is Miriam Adelson the victim, or Larry Ellison, right? Now, if you attack a random synagogue, those people are victims. They didn't do anything. They're random plumbers and dentists and stuff. What are you attacking them for, right? That's a victim. But to say that the most powerful people in the country that are legally bribing all of our politicians are defenseless victims is traditional media just lying to you on purpose to protect Israel. And you're absolutely right. The people who are the boomers watching television are still pro-Israel. And by the way, pro-corruption. And they don't know it because they've been brainwashed into believing all of these ludicrous things that serve all of the powerful people, not just the Zionists, but big pharma, big oil, defense contractors, etc. And that's the job of television, is to brainwash you. You've got to unplug from the matrix. If you don't unplug, you're purposely poisoning your mind, and you've got to get your family members off of it. It's a drug, right? And so meanwhile, though, under 50 years old across everyone, right? Race and religion don't matter. Israel's approval rating is -45. Okay. So, Dave, it's super obvious what's driving it. It's the media that people are watching. So if you're watching propaganda on television, you would think that the Palestinians are occupying the Israelis, and the Israelis are the victims of the Palestinians for the last 60 years, right? And they tell you all sorts of lies that you and I are super familiar with. Then when you come online, something magical happens. It's not just that our shows are better, and to be fair to us, they are better. Way more informed if you watch Dave every day than if you watch CNN and it's not close, right? So also what happens is, well, Dave and I disagree on some things, and Tucker and I disagree on some things, and then Dave and Tucker disagree on some things. So now you're forced to use your own mind and your independent judgment to make a decision on who's right and wrong, whether it's on Israel or Social Security or the carried interest loophole. And so once we've got people using that muscle of independent judgment, the propaganda is fucked. And mainstream media is utterly screwed, because once you use your independent judgment, you look at TV and you go, oh my God, it's all bullshit.
Yeah. And particularly, there is something particularly with the Zionist propaganda, the Hasbara, as it's known, because I think there's a couple things going on, right? Obviously, it's the decentralization of the media, people getting their media through alternative shows where they can actually hear someone present the truth in a competent way. It's also the actions of the Israeli government have really made it pretty easy over the last couple of years to, demonstrate why any rational person should be opposed to it. But I got to say, there is also something particularly about how bad they are at this. It's been a thing that I know it's been a major theme on the Young Turks, and it's been a major theme on my podcast for the last 2.5 years or so, that you're just like, oh my God, you guys are really so bad at this. It's like, oh, it was just that the game was always controlled. As soon as it's level at all, they can't. I mean, me and you, I think if I'm not mistaken, the first time we met was when we did a debate together against Bacha and Dennis Prager.
Yeah.
And
they're saying, oh, why are they so bad at this? Maybe they're not bad at it. Maybe they're just really, really good at their jobs.
I can't believe how one-sided this is.
What makes anybody think
I was just like, they're not it was like after it had been going on for 30, 40, 50 minutes. And you're like, dude, they haven't won one volley of this yet. It's just, they have nothing. They don't have an argument, And you've seen this kind of, and even I was thinking about this with the, this stunt with you not being allowed to go to the UK. Even as I'm doing this, I'm like, hey, okay, if I were the villain on the other side, controlling the Zionist propaganda, and someone came to me with this proposal, I'd go, no, dude, don't do this, because this just, like, you guys just are not good at this. It just, first off, it totally reaffirms the accusation being made. It's the old Norm Macdonald joke where he goes, Marlon Brando said Jews control Hollywood. And then he met with a bunch of rabbis to apologize, at which point they said, all right, we accept, you can work again. And it's like, oh yeah, that you doing this proves that the accusation was correct. And then on top of that, it's like, is there any feeling just for the way the new ecosystem works? Like, it's like, okay, look, honestly, even as you're saying it, what they denied you really was like a cool moment for your sister and something that would have been a fun time for you, because obviously you enjoy doing what you do for a living, and you would have gone and had fun, you would have enjoyed the appearances. But it's like, I don't know, really, when guys like me and you go do live appearances, we might be speaking to a few thousand people, but then when we go back on the internet, we're probably speaking to a few 100,000 to a few million people. So it's not like you're really denying, and in fact, way more people are now going to hear about this story, and then so like it just works out in your favor in a weird way. I guess it's kind of flabbergasting how bad they are at this. Like, what even is the plan here? Oh, that did it. That shut it down. Cenk Uyghur couldn't go to the UK. I guess we all love Israel again now.
Yeah. So first of all, Dave, you're an awesome debating partner. I mean, if I'm going to go into a debate, like there's the top three people.
Am I the only one that thinks it's odd that Britain did it so ham-handed? Oh, and they just did it so everybody could see it. Am I the only one that's suspicious of that and thinks, then obviously they meant to do it? So, Dave Smith, you're a fucking idiot. Like, bro, are you stupid?
This isn't fair. We're just slaughtering them, right? And the reason is, as Bane told Batman, victory has defeated you. And so what happened with the Israelis and their supporters is that they got flabby, and they had control of, yes, and they can kiss my ass if they disagree with this, of mainstream media completely. And we can get into why and how later. And so they weren't used to arguing. They were just used to like these silly talking points that are so easily pushed over, right? Like, oh, you owe Israel $300 billion because they're a special ally. Well, what does that mean? The minute you ask, what does special ally mean? It's instantly defeated, because it's nonsense. You can call anything a special ally. And they're like, what do you mean? We've been brainwashing Americans to think that they're a special ally, and that's why they owe them hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't know how to answer you if you say that they're not a special ally, right? So, everyone who criticizes Israel is an anti-Semite. Like, all of these talking points are.
Why, the thing is nobody knows why the sudden change. Why has everything changed? Why, are they cracking down so openly? Why are they committing genocides out in the open? What the hell is going on? They didn't used to do this stuff. What is going on? What has changed? That's the prescient point here.
No, I don't want any part of this, right? And so sometimes it's because their talking points suck and they've lost the debate. And I'm now seeing like Zionist-I debate getting demoralized live on air, right? And it's not because you and I are so good. I mean, I think we're okay. I think we're pretty good, but it's because they really have nothing to stand on. When you go to empirical evidence and factual stuff, oh, the Palestinians are terrorists. But then wait a minute, your civilian kill ratio for the IDF is worse than Hamas or Hezbollah, and you've killed 100 times the number of civilians. And we all know you're targeting them because you're doing double taps and you're hitting hospitals and schools and churches and mosques, etc. So they don't have any evidence. We have all of the evidence. Like if it was Debate Club, they'd be like, no, this isn't fair. We got to switch it up, right?
Well, I use this example sometimes because like in Debate Club in high school or college or whatever, this is to test. Like, if you want to test who is the best at the sport of debating, what they do is they have you switch sides of the resolution, or like there'll be a resolution and you got to be prepared to argue either side. So the way I say it, I always go, hey, I'm not that great of a debater. I don't think I could win on their side. Like if they got all my points and I had to take all their points, I don't think I could win that debate because there's so many better points on this side. Like that's really just what it comes down to. Is it's just like, I don't know, dude, like your side says that we have to annihilate all of Gaza because of Hamas. And then my side gets to go, well, first of all, no, you don't have to. And number two, you funded and created Hamas. And you're like, I don't know. That's just a way better side than the side saying we need to. By the way, I wanted to talk to you about this because the moment we're in literally right now is like such a perfect microcosm of the whole thing, of exactly what we're talking about. So you have right now a situation where we are desperate to get out of this catastrophic war. We desperately need to rescue the global economy. Clearly, Donald Trump has.
I remember saying this a couple months ago that Israel was literally a front for America. Okay, if that's the case, if Israel is a front for America, then we don't desperately want to get out. Maybe that's just a kabuki theater to make us comfortable with what's happening. Oh, I'm Trump. I'm Trump. I'm trying to get out of the Middle East. Got to get out of that darn Middle East. Like everybody's fighting, hates this war. And it looks to me like our government is like, no, we got to do this war, whether the people like it or not. And Israel is just the Scooby-Doo mask that they put on so that they can do stuff that we don't like, and so that we'll hate Israel, not our own government.
And again, it's not a left or a right issue at all. It's a basic sovereignty issue. And they got nothing in response.
So let me connect those two topics, right? Because I love the shoe on the other foot idea. I talk about it on the Arturks all the time. Well, okay, what if you went through this instead of that, right? But I hadn't gone through that mental exercise you just forced me into. What if I had to debate the Israeli side? And the minute you said it, I thought, I swear to God, instantly in my head, I was like, I went through all their arguments in like about a couple of seconds. And then I thought, oh, I know what I'd do. I would shut down the debate. Because you can't win. So you got to shut down the debate. That is a totally unwinnable side. So, pull a hamstring, pull the fire alarm, or call everyone anti-Semite so you can't have the debate. And that's why they're doing.
Or come in and talk about whether you're an expert or you've never been or you've never, it's like the stuff that they call you an anti-Semite, or I've seen a dozen of your different your debates where that's exactly what they're doing.
And, they're talking about, like you can't argue for the Israel side. You'll lose the debate. So you shut down the debate. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because really what they're doing is making an authoritarian play right here. But if they use Israel as the front and make it look like Israel is shutting down and doing soft censorship through X and stuff, then it doesn't look like we're entering the authoritarian era that we are. This is just the opening salvo.
And just trying to stall you from getting to the point you want to make about Gaza. Yeah, that's the best way to play it. Like, I don't know. Douglas Murray did the best thing he could have done against me. What else was he going to do?
So can I owe you a debt of gratitude on that one, Dave, because I debated Douglas Murray on Piers Morgan like way before you did. And he pulled that same bullshit about, have you been there? And I was like, what fucking difference would that make? You went on some propaganda junket, et cetera. But at the time, the situation was not as clear as it is today, right?
Right.
So at the time, that was right in the beginning of the Gaza conflict. So people were like, oh yeah, you haven't been there, so he wins, ha ha, right? And all that stuff. And then you eviscerated Douglas Murray, and then people then went back and they were like, oh, Cenk was right. Yeah, what fucking difference does it make? Right?
Well, there's a few things. Well, there's a few things there, right? There's a few dynamics. So number one that I think you correctly pointed out is that I got like over a year later. So I had over a year more of the entire public being turned against this whole thing, or maybe it wasn't a year, but something like it. Or it was months later, at least. I had a big window of just atrocities being committed since there. But then the other thing that really, because a lot of this is like the social psychology of it, this is the way people are persuaded, is that part of it too is that you got him on a remote Pierce Morgan debate, whereas I got him in a room with Joe Rogan for 3 hours. And so there's
He's
just there,
screwed.
I had him more in a situation, but not just that he's screwed, that it's like there's the Pierce Morgan thing, and this is just kind of the nature of it. It's almost anticipated this is going to get into a food fight. This is going to get into something where it's I'm getting one up on you. But when you got Joe Rogan, the most likable, biggest, guy in shows, and he's sitting there like, hey, I love both of you guys. Let's just be cool and get down to the real issue here, And so then in that environment, it just becomes that much more obvious. It's not like, oh yeah, you got an own. I've been and you haven't been. It's more like it was just more obvious that like, oh, you don't actually have anything to say. You don't actually have a response, and so this is it.
It's actually
so it was a lot of it is time and place and situation.
Yeah, and it's exactly why Kamala Harris didn't do Rogan's show, because in 3 hours you're going to get exposed one way or another, right? And so Murray wasn't going to ever, beat you in that context. And but you did a public service to everyone, so that was awesome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and so now though we're at a time right now where we're at the most critical decision point. So I'm really happy that I'm talking to you now because. What I want to establish on the record for everyone. Oh, by the way, before I go into that, your point about Piers Morgan is so right. So now when I go on like Sean Ryan's show or Tucker's show or Diary of a CEO or wherever I go, like sometimes people are like, "Oh, that's weird. Why isn't he yelling?" Well, brother, I don't have to yell if some mad Israeli isn't shouting over me, right?
Yeah,
so,
fair.
And Lex Friedman, oh my God, 4 some odd hours of a perfectly civil conversation, really intellectual conversation. I loved it, right? So anyway, so we're at this critical point now because, like you said, Trump says, okay, Netanyahu, cut it out. No more bombing Lebanon. Let's get to peace. Because ExxonMobil is saying, guys, even if we don't restart the war, a barrel of oil is going to $150 to $160. So there's going to be an economic iceberg we're going to hit that is kind of inevitable. And if you restart the war, oh my God, they didn't get into that, but now we're talking about $200. I mean, people have no idea about the devastation that's about to happen, okay, economically. And so Trump has to get out of it. I mean, he can't. It'll obliterate his term, his legacy, his reputation, the economy, his party, the country. So it'll ruin what people think of Trump. So he must get out. Now, on the other hand, you have Netanyahu comes out and goes, no, shut up, Donald. I'm going to bomb Lebanon even more. And I'm going to bomb their Beirut. And Ben Gvir says, bomb the suburbs of Beirut where the civilians are. Mass bombings, right? So they say basically, America, who the fuck do you think you are? Okay? We're in charge. You're not in charge. So now, the reason why it's such good news that we're talking today is because we're all about to find out together who's in charge, right? So if Trump goes, look, this is a bridge too far. Now, I get it. You guys gave me hundreds of millions of dollars and you have this and you promised me secret deals and Trump Tower and all of that and the Trump Riviera, but this is going to destroy me. So no, I'm pulling out. That means America still has some level of sovereignty left, right? But if we then go, oh, so sorry, our overlords, we told you to stop and you told us we're losers and that we have to obey you. And so now we're obeying you and going further into the war. Then Israel doesn't have a little of influence, a little control. No, that means they have 100% control over Trump at a minimum and over certainly our government and our media. And now I don't get to determine that. That's why we do predictions on the
makes anybody think.
I'm telling you.
What makes anybody think that Israel is any higher up on the hierarchy than Trump is? Maybe they're right next there. Boom. Maybe Israel and Trump are like this, and they're just working as a team. But maybe Trump is just a lackey. Maybe Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu are just a lackey that do other people's dirty work.
So if you say it ahead of time, you'll know that there is a script, right? And there is a certain pattern here, and you can discern it.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I wanted to ask you about this this Axios piece from yesterday, which is, I'm not really myself completely sure what to make of it. So there's a piece that essentially is saying that they, Axios has throughout this entire war served as the mouthpiece of the regime. They feed it stories and they run the stories that they want to. It's unbelievable how much they can just get things wrong and then just keep moving. Like they've reported on the deal being done several times already. Seems to be some blatant market manipulation going on there. But yesterday they have this piece that Donald Trump has a furious phone call with Benjamin Netanyahu and he's cursing him out and he's like, "You're a maniac." Now, to be fair, Axios has had other pieces like this before. And if you remember, Crystal Ball made this point on Twitter recently that, like, yeah, they used to run these pieces about how Biden was cracking down on Israel behind the scenes. And then, Trump's furious at Israel behind the scenes. And it's not, I don't know, there's something in it that to me, at least on the surface, I tend to go like, this is all just made up. Because also, even just given like the 12-day war, I mean, the exact same dynamic went on there. Israel lured us into the war, set the no enrichment standards, poisoned the negotiations, led the first attack. And then when Trump wanted the off-ramp and a ceasefire, they kept the bombing up. And then Trump, has that one comment where he says they all don't know what the fuck they're doing or whatever. It's like, so part of me is like, this isn't real. But if it is, like, there's basically two options. Either that's not true, and yet the administration wants us to think that behind the scenes they are cracking the whip on Israel, or it is true, in which case it's exactly what you just said it is. It's like, okay, so what comes of that? So you told them they didn't want, they're not allowed to do this thing. They're doing it anyway, and you do what? Because I will say, like, I was listening to an interview with Jeffrey Sachs recently, and he said something in a very simple way that I think maybe I've been kind of under acknowledging this whole time, which is that he's like, what's all this talk about a deal? Right, we don't need a deal. Why do we need to make a deal with the Iranians? Like, we're worlds apart on the nuclear issue. We're worlds apart on intercontinental ballistic missiles. We're worlds apart on proxies. There's no deal to be made here, but we could just stop and come home and not support Israel anymore. And what are they going to do? Keep the Strait of Hormuz closed and make everyone in the world hate them forever, doing something blatantly illegal? No, eventually they're going to have to stop and they'll just get to it. So anyway, the point being, short of whatever grip the Israel lobby has over Donald Trump, there's no law in logic that says we can't just do all of that. Okay, you're furious at Israel? Tell Iran, you know what? We can't control Israel, but we're not helping them anymore. So between you guys, they'd be fine with that. That'd be the best win they could hope for. So let's just do that.
So Dave, again, we're talking at a perfect time because the proof is about to be in the pudding, and we're going to have a definitive answer. But let me break down what you're saying. So Anna has a theory that well, first of all, Barak Ravid is former Israeli intelligence, right? So, okay, now that doesn't mean that he's not reformed, and now in media, etc. But back in the Biden days, we are not normal Democrats or people on the left, right? So normally, you do propaganda for your side. That's like the old school way of doing media. But we started doing it new way 24 years ago, right? Where we're like, no, we're going to call out both sides. And so when Biden would do those strongly worded calls or letters to Netanyahu, we would mock him to no end. What a little bitch, right? Oh, here's $21 billion to commit a genocide. But please don't. I beg you, Israel. I beg you not to kill all of them. Why are you begging them? How about,
dude, remember there was 1 week where he sold them weapons and asked them not to use the weapons he just sold them? There was 1 week where, like, I forget the type of bomb it was, but he gave it to him and then went, "But please don't use this." And then they used it. You're like, yo, dude, what is this?
It's just faux resistance.
It's kabuki theater.
Pathetic.
It's
and
just straight
I hate
up
it under both Biden and Trump, because not only are we losing our sovereignty, but we're losing our self-respect. What is this groveling to a country the size of Papua New Guinea? That's their population. It's nearly identical. And when you put in Papua New Guinea instead of Israel, everybody realizes how absurd it is. But it's because of mainstream media brainwashing that we think, no, Israel, like, yeah, even though they're tiny, they should control us. And we should go into every war for them. We should do $8 trillion of the global war on Israel's neighbors. So Anna's theory is, yeah, Barack Ravid has done this 100 times. He basically works for the Israelis. And he did it under Biden. He did it under Trump, just like you said, right? And so these are all fake outs to make it seem like we're two different entities. But in reality, Israel calls the shots, and this is all fake theater and drama. So that's perfectly legitimate, and maybe that's exactly what's going on. But if that's true, okay, then you have your answer. Israel's in charge. Okay, now to your point. Now, if you go to the other scenario, that's the scenario that I was describing, right? So maybe in this case, they really did have a blow up, and Trump really is frustrated. That doesn't sound unrealistic, right? He's like, Netanyahu, why are you making me destroy my reputation and my presidency and my country and my party? And Netanyahu says, shut up, bitch. Okay. And now we're going to find out in that scenario, well, who's the bitch, right? Who serves who? Who's the overlord? And it doesn't matter what we say, and it doesn't matter what the religions are. What matters is what happens in the real world. So if we go back into this disastrous war, and everyone will see with their own eyes, how
it is absolutely possible that America, as we know it, is already over. And so he's like, oh, he's hurting his reputation. Trump is hurting his reputation as the president. What if he's the last president? What if America is over with and the Constitution is dead and the whole thing is over with? Does it matter if Trump has a bad reputation at that point?
And so, but if it is real, and then Trump draws the line on Netanyahu and we leave, then great. Then we're not controlled by Israel. Terrific. Okay. Now they still have massive influence. They got us into the war in the first place. They got us to do the first war. They got us to give them hundreds of billions of dollars. Now they're looking to merge our militaries, which is insanity. Right. Yeah. So, but okay, apparently it's not 100%. But if we go back in, it is 100%. And so you can't argue with it. You can call people anti-Semites and try to shut down the debate, but it's crystal clear what's happened. And Dave, I think that, like, Israel has lost its mind, right? Netanyahu and all those guys. We can get into the culture of the population if we want. That's a separate topic. But the government has definitively lost its mind, because here's an easy peace deal that America can make. And there's two possibilities for Israel here. One is that we take Dave Smith's advice, which I couldn't agree more with. And in fact, I think that there is a deal to be made. I disagree with Jeffrey Sachs just a tiny bit. If I was in charge, I'd go to the Iranians, go, hey, listen, you don't really care about the highly enriched uranium. You were just doing that to make sure we don't attack you, right? I get that it was for leverage. I know that there's a fatwa, and I know that you don't have a missile that could deliver it anyway. Okay, so and you've already agreed under the Obama deal and under two different peace offers that you let us take out the highly enriched uranium, and you get some sort of energy program verified by international monitors. You open up the Strait of Hormuz, we lift a blockade, and we're done. We're done. There's no other interest at all. They're ballistic missiles. Countries are allowed to have ballistic missiles. Yeah. No, that's absurd. We don't have any of those interests. So in that scenario, then Israel's screwed, because Iran has a lot of drones and a lot of missiles, and Israel now realizes, we might have messed with the bear here, right? So that's scenario number one. Scenario number two is they drag us into the war. Hey, they won. They got American military and American soldiers to fight their war for them. No, but then gas is going to go up by $1 and $2, and inflation is going to be horrific, and the markets are going to crash. The markets are driven by lunatics at this point. I can't believe it hasn't already crashed, but it's inevitable. And then no matter how much propaganda mainstream media and the government does, and no matter how much they ban us from all the different Western countries, it's not going to work. The dam is going to break. The dam's in the middle of breaking as we speak. But if they cause that kind of economic catastrophe here in America, Israel will be more hated than Jeffrey Dahmer. Israel will be the most hated thing in America. And so how does that help Israel? So these lunatics have set up a lose-lose for both themselves and America and the world. So why are we listening to the lunatics?
All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is
Does anybody know who the number one miner of Bitcoin in the world is? And the number two? It's interesting. Check it out. Like, run that through AI. It's quite illuminating. Iran is the number one miner of Bitcoin in the world. Iran and Russia. And, and that strikes me as odd because why is Iran so hell-bent on having nuclear energy? They're the number one sovereign Bitcoin miners on the planet, and they insist on having nuclear energy. Why is that? And they're the only country in the Middle East, Iran, that we don't have, that isn't in our back pocket. The only Middle Eastern oil that we don't control.
Having this conversation, and you've kind of made a big point over the last few years to I don't know how to exactly say it, to kind of plant your flag in the idea that you're in the let's have conversations across the aisle camp. And I'm not talking about, with politicians, like literally across the aisle. I mean, with people and people who are differences in opinions. You're more of a left wing guy, and you have a lot of conversations with people like me or Tucker, or people who are more right wing guys. And this inevitably gets a lot of backlash. I know there's been left wingers who have criticized you for taking this approach, and I'm sure
and what happened in Gaza? Like, it's funny you bring up Palantir. What happened in Gaza? That was Palantir. That was a beta testing of weaponry for Palantir. All of the arrests going on in the UK for people that have wrong think on the X, that was a beta testing for Palantir. ICE is a beta testing for Palantir. It's private. ICE is private. Literally, there's a company making money off of deporting illegals. And they killed 2 Americans while they were doing it. Isn't that weird?
People do on all sides, by the way. Like when I have Nick Fuentes on, they're like, "Oh, so you're palling around with Nick Fuentes, or you're legitimizing Nick Fuentes, you're platforming," and you're like, "Dude, just say the actual thing so you sound as ridiculous as you do." I'm talking to him. That's what you're upset about. I'm having a conversation with somebody. Like what? And it does. I don't know. I just find this to be a very bizarre dynamic. And I've just always, since I've been into politics, I've always had this thing where it's like, if you're ever going down a path where your enemy is your neighbor, you're going down the wrong path. That is just not correct. And it's not that your neighbor maybe doesn't have his problems or have a different way of living life than you do, but that is true. There certainly are a lot of that. And you may have some bad neighbors. I'm not saying your neighbors are all great, but like, yeah, in the United States of America, you're not being oppressed by your neighbor. You're really not. Like that just is not there are powerful interests who have rigged this entire economy and our entire government policy against the American people on behalf of a very small group of powerful people. And those are your enemies. And if they're not, you're not doing political commentary right.
Has anybody here read The Prince by Machiavelli? And there's a portion in The Prince where he's talking about a really clever way to rule over your people and to check your people by he basically writes a story about a duke who he runs a city, and he hires somebody to run the city for him and then leaves. And he tells that person that he hires what he wants done, and he has this person basically crack down and become this really vicious tyrant. And then the Duke, after that guy has totally, cracked the whip and got the whole population in line and got them scared, where they hate this guy. Well, the Duke comes back And then he appears before the town people and he says, well, how's life been treating you? You know, what's going on? And they say, this evil tyrant that is here, he's been killing us. He's been torturing us. He's been, you know, just treating us terrible. We hate this guy's guts. He's a demon. So the Duke says, oh, how could this be? I had no idea. I wasn't aware. I was told that, you know, everything was going fine and he was treating everybody, you know, fairly. And then he sets out and he has the tyrant killed. He has the tyrant's head cut off. So he just pacified and laid down the law with his own people. But they don't hate him, they hate the tyrant. And then he kills the tyrant and they say, oh, thank you, Duke. You've killed the tyrant. You've rescued us. You've rescued us from the tyrant. But in all reality, he was the tyrant. He just got somebody else to do his dirty work. So he got what he wanted done, and his people love him for it. Strikes me that is exactly what Israel is.
Your side on the left, we've always been anti-war, right? And they come over and say, hey, I'd like to vote with you on anti-war or cutting off Israel's funding or being against the genocide. And you say no to that. I'm not allowed to use the R word anymore, but that's what you are. Okay. Like, no, I don't want your vote agreeing with me is perhaps the least intelligent thing you could ever do in politics. It's defies sense. I defy anyone to have that make sense, right? So, and then finally, look, on the super important and hard issues, whether it's ending a war, ending a genocide, or getting money out of politics, you literally cannot win without both sides, all sides coming together. So in order to get money out of politics, you need an amendment. That means you need 3/4 of the states to ratify it. There are too many blue states and there are too many red states. So if you're a right winger thinking, oh, I'll get money out of politics without any of those do-gooder liberals, well, I don't need them. You're totally wrong. You do need us. There's too many blue states. You can't get an amendment passed, right? Same thing for the left. I mean, my God, I've been fighting for that constitutional amendment through Wolfpack for the last 15 years, right? And my biggest opponents are establishment Democrats. My biggest opponents used to be the Koch brothers, American Enterprise Institute, neocons, et cetera, right? Then Pelosi came along and she told all of the state legislators, you are not to work with Wolfpack. A convention is dangerous change. Change is bad. And then she had all these people parroting, change is bad, don't do a convention, right? So the reality, and they're like, and I ask those guys every time, I'm like, okay, so you're going to get an amendment without working with the right wing. Go ahead, tell me how you're going to get 38 states. There is no way to get 38 states without the right and the left working together. So anyone who's trying to do that is trying to divide us. They might not know it consciously, but they're helping the propaganda of traditional media. Who divided us in the first place? Traditional media did, right? So, but wait a minute. Why am I on the left and you're on the right if we agree on, let's say, make up a number, 40% of issues? So why do we have to hate each other? Why?
You know, it's so weird how Cenk and these guys, you know, they get it partially right. They get it partially right, but they don't go. They don't. It's like, I don't understand. How do they miss the rest of it? You know, like, oh, you know, the left and the right, they would disagree on stuff like abortion and this and that, just to make it seem like they disagreed on something, but really they're the uniparty. And it's like, well, why is it that everybody talks about the uniparty and then they still act as if left and the right matters? Well, if there is in fact a uniparty, that means the left and the right is just a figment of our imagination. Doesn't exist. It's just a fiction.
Ever, you know, like if there was a Maoist authoritarian, you know, from my perspective, just really horrible politics, but we agreed on one small issue, then like, yeah, I'm probably not going to coalition with that person over a small issue. Like if we agreed on some like zoning law in a local ordinance or something like that, but he's like a Maoist, probably okay. I'm not going to want to, but like, what it comes down to is how important is the issue that we're talking about here? You know, like to me, that has so like even just now when you were talking about money in politics, I think me and you have a slightly different view, or maybe a
Oh shit.
pretty
My bad.
drastically different view on that. And that would be a really interesting conversation. Like we could do another podcast and we could talk for a whole hour about that topic. But like this podcast is kind of, in my mind, about us coalitioning on this current war that's going on. And the reason why I'm more interested to talk about that with you right now is because, like, my God, man, there's a war on right now, and the global economy hangs in the balance, and like thousands of people have been killed. Like we killed like 200 little girls on the first day of this strike. It's being done with our money and our name, and like I don't know. I judge that that's the most important thing right now. And I know when I was on the Young Turks, I think I made the comparison to you know, like if it was 1845 and we were both abolitionists, and then we just started arguing about tax policy the whole time. It's like, my God, man, there's human beings are enslaved right now. Like it's incumbent on you to put those differences aside and work with. And then the other thing, which look, maybe this is just a simple, just the way I am. Look, I don't know what to say. If I was, this is from my perspective, but I think if I was watching an episode of the Young Turks in 2017 or 2018, and then I watched an episode of like I don't know, like Steven Crowder's show or something, I don't know, I might have agreed more with some of the stuff he was saying than the stuff you guys were saying. But today, if I watch you know, like if I'm watching like Bannon and Jack Posobiec pretending there's a deal and celebrating how Donald Trump just got a historic win,
a total
just
joke.
So obviously not true. It's just like sitting here watching people lie to me in the dumbest possible way.
Yeah.
And then I turn on an episode of the Young Turks and I'm like, God damn, Cenk and Anna are nailing it. So like, and by the way, from my perspective, I haven't changed at all during this time. You know, like, I mean, maybe a little bit around the edges, but I'm pretty much still agree with the same stuff. So sorry, like, don't come at me for that. It's not my fault that these guys are lying to you and these guys are telling the truth, but that's kind of where we're at right now. And at least to me, I go, look, at least since October 7th, you know, now there's certain guys who, in my opinion, have always just been phenomenal, who are left wingers. I mean, Jeremy Scahill and Glenn Greenwald and guys like this, I think have just been phenomenal reporters. And Ryan Grimm is a phenomenal reporter. But if I'm listening to Crystal Ball or Cenk Uyghur or anyone over the last 2.5 years talking about foreign policy, I think they're largely getting it right. And so what is the expectation here? That I'm not supposed to like interact with the people who are right about the most important thing right now? And for everyone else, I think it's, you know, left and right are useful terms, and there are meaningful differences between my worldview and yours because of our different perspectives. But it's also like, you can't, when you're talking about people, they're not defined by their politics, dude. Issues are much more important than whatever you think your, you know, worldview is. What actually matters is,
I really don't like all this personality stuff, you know, like how our politics, how all of it has just turned into personalities. Like people come on into the chat and they're like, oh, you guys watch Nick Fuentes, this and that. Like, you should watch this guy. Or everybody puts all their faith in people, in personalities. It's like, bro, these are flawed human beings. Let that shit go, man. Just listen to what they have to say. You know, soak it in and keep it in mind. Keep that in your back pocket. But don't follow these people. Don't put faith in these people. Don't get emotional over it and start, you know, creating, you know, because what people end up doing there is they end up like devoting themselves to that person. And then they feel like they're being attacked when somebody else attacks that person. You know, like the whole caping for pundits, these guys are just shills. I mean, they're all shills. They're all paid to tell us bullshit. Both sides, every one of them, Nick Fuentes included. I mean, whether they know it or not, either they know that they're just selling bullshit, or they're sincere and they think that you know, they think that what they're saying means anything or means something. I mean, you know, there really is a good chance that both Nick and Tucker Carlson are literally They're just paid shills. There's a damn good chance that that's the case. They're both there's a good chance they're both feds. There's a good chance Alex Jones, where they're all feds, every single one of them. That's essentially what it comes down to. They're all feds. Their job is to tell us some bullshit narrative that's believable and that gets us to be quiet.
Subject for us to talk about, because it's not exactly that I disagree with you. It's more that my perspective is that when you have a government that's so powerful, it's going to be impossible to ensure that it's not rigged by someone. That doesn't mean I'd be against some ideas that could maybe make it less easy to rig. But when Washington, D.C. moves $7 trillion every year, you find the example I always give is like, so Hillary Clinton, it's illegal for Saudi Arabia to give money to the Hillary Clinton campaign. So they give her foundation $100 million, no matter how you're going to write the point is that Saudi Arabia is going to find a way to gain favor with whoever the next commander in chief is. And now look at all these things they're doing with Donald Trump. It's like, I mean, probably some of that is illegal, but at the same time, I think it's almost like, it's like the Lord Atkin, ultimate absolute power corrupts absolutely. And it's like, if you don't lower the level of power, you're not going to be able to lower the level of corruption, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So look, I can't wait to have that debate with you on another day. And,
yeah, we don't have enough time to get into all of that.
But I know that you can't criticize the Clinton Foundation because you haven't been there.
I have not been to the Clinton Foundation.
Funny.
Well, let me just say one more, and then you know what? I'm sorry that I shouldn't have gotten into that because we don't have time to get into a whole new topic. But I'll give you the last word on this. But I did want to say, because there has been, at least I've seen this dynamic. I talked about this last time I was on Breaking Points, and I'm kind of interested to get your reaction to this because, when part of it, I got in some arguments with like Kyle Kalinske and Mehdi Hassan over this. And these are two people who I probably on foreign policy have large areas of agreement with both.
You guys remember that Shinzo Abe? We're done with that. They're just bullshit. They're just dragging it out. You guys remember that dude Shinzo Abe, the Japanese prime minister that was assassinated? Well, I'm sure you guys do know. But I was just reading, apparently that guy was assassinated because he was dealing with Iran behind the scenes. He went behind the West's back and was dealing with Iran. So they had him murdered. They've murdered a lot of people. A lot of people have been assassinated. One second. Yeah, that Shinzo Abe, I thought that's kind of crazy because, and remember Trump, oh, I knew Shinzo, I really like Shinzo, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, the dude got shot because he was dealing with Iran directly. I guess he was trying to he was trying to go around the US more or less and deal with Iran because, Iran, they're not a part of the West. They don't deal with the West. They don't deal in dollars. They deal in Bitcoin and yuan. China, they don't, they're totally disconnected from the West. They're totally, China is, like America could sanction China 100% and it wouldn't change anything. China is totally self-sufficient, totally doesn't need the West at all. Russia's the same way. Russia, China, and Iran. And, like Trump going over to China with all the leaders of our industry, yeah, they were going to cut a deal with China, who's taking over. China has their own system entirely, their own financial system, everything. They have their own stuff, and that's why they went out of their way to become the leader in solar panels and clean energy and electric energy, because they didn't want to have to buy. Before they had the clean energy, the only way they could get energy without going through the West was through Iran. That's the only way. If without the clean energy, without solar, that's why China went for all the solar, because they didn't want to have to deal with our scummy asses. They're like, why would we want to deal with you scumbags? You destroy everything you touch. You literally destroy every little thing you touch. You and your fucking thugs, you gangsters. And Iran, same thing, except they didn't have the ability to go for solar and to build out that kind of clean energy, so they went the nuclear route. They wanted to do the nuclear route, and that's why they can't have a nuclear weapon. It has nothing to do with a nuclear weapon. Nobody cares. They're not trying to get a nuclear weapon. They never were trying to get a nuclear weapon. We've known that. Trump knows that. Israel knows that. What's going on is they're subverting the Western system in cahoots with China and Russia. I mean, the BRICS thing, that's a lot bigger than we realize. A lot bigger. We're in real trouble. That's why Trump went over to see Xi Jinping a couple weeks ago, because we're on our way out. And they have to cut a deal with the Chinese before America is hollowed out husk. We still have a lot of power. Our stock market is still the top market. So Trump went over there with all of our captains of industry so that they could optimize, and plug into China's system, or do kind of a joint thing, a joint venture. Which is probably the reason why Trump thought, well, maybe, we can partner with Iran, because Iran and China, Iran, China, and Russia, they don't need us. They don't have to mess with us. And us fighting with or using the Ukraine, like the Israel is the same as the Ukraine for us. It's this puppet that we use. That's what it is. It's a puppet. It's a way that they embezzle money. It's a way that they run the empire. Ukraine is like a it's an outpost, just like Israel. The Ukraine allowed us to control Asia, parts of Asia, parts of Europe. And Israel allowed us to control the Middle East. And Israel, how they've been attacking and killing their neighbors for a century now. Yeah, that was the point. Anytime any Arab country thought they were slick and thought they were gonna kick us out and take control of their oil wells and nationalize them and give it to their people, yeah, that was a mistake. They're all dead. They all had a bullet put in their brains. And I think the same thing happened to the Shah. Honestly, I think they put a bullet in his head too. After they got rid of that guy, the one guy, Mossadegh. But, we inherited that from the British. Why would we let some little shit kicker or little tribe of Bedouins take our golden goose from us? And when it comes to Iran, we didn't have a choice. They took hostages. And the country is like impenetrable, practically. What I mean, I wonder, you guys ever thought about how the British Empire was taken down, or what happened when it? I don't know. I don't think so, dude. I think Israel is just America. Yeah, the Shah flag. Yeah, exactly. Because the Shah was our man. He was our puppet. He was our puppet. They were throwing us out of Iran. So of course they would send their puppet out with us. Get the hell out of here and take your puppet bitch with you. Take your Shah with you. He's a scum. I mean, that's essentially what it was. Uh, we got ran out, and the Shah along with us. And they've been trying to get along without us ever since. Basically, they've been trying to build themselves up and build up their country. And they're not this radical extreme people or government. Not at all. We kind of have the radical extreme government that kills everything it touches, that steals from everybody, that installs dictators and then does regime changes if they try any funny stuff. And to let us into your country is to let us have your country. And the Iranians know that. They went through it already. They already knew. We can't let them. We have to kick them out. We have to completely kick them out, and they got to stay out. Because if they don't stay out, they own it. They own it all. They won't let us have our own oil. They won't let us live in peace. And we've been trying to subvert them and undermine them. We literally devalued their currency to nothing. All their people's pensions, we robbed their people. Their people have been working to earn money, save up, to have pensions. They've been doing that for 40 years. And then we literally devalued their currency till it was worthless as monopoly money. And then tell them to rise up against their government. Like we robbed their people. And imagine if you were their people and you go to get money out of your ATM and you put the card in and then you do a balance check and there's $0. Every single person in Iran lost everything they had because of us, because of our government. They stole everything from them. And they're fighting it. They didn't fall for it. They didn't fall for the ruse. I mean, which good on them, they didn't fall for the ruse, and we're still trying to figure out how to damage that government, but it's not working. It's not working. We haven't done anything. And another weird thing is, you notice, Venezuela, they used to be the same as Russia and Israel, or not Israel. They used to be the same as Russia and Iran. Why is it the three countries, or Iran and Venezuela, the two small, there's only like a handful of countries that don't deal with us, and out of that handful, there's only two that are possible for us to take over, and both of them we took over. Isn't that weird? Like, why not China? If that's the case, why not Russia? Why we just stole Venezuela's stuff. We just stole their oil. I mean, outright stole their oil. And we would do exactly what we did to Venezuela. We would do it to Iran if we could do it. That's what they're trying to do. That's the whole point of this exercise, is for for them to get a hold of Iran's stuff, all of their resources, because those resources, that's capital. That's they it's another way they can make money. It's another way they can make money. It's really they've run out of countries and assets to sell off and pawn off. So now they're robbing the other. Like if we were a drug dealer, the West, we basically just ran out of our own dope. And we just like ran out of our own dope, and now we're robbing the neighbor drug dealers because we don't want to, you know, we're dope sick and we're stealing from our neighbors. I mean, that's essentially what we just did with Venezuela. That's what we're trying to do with Iran. We're trying to rob them. We're trying to take all their stuff. You know, I mean, and that's what we do when we do the sanction thing. That's us stealing their money. That's just one way we do it. You know, we do it other ways, by devaluing their currency, by doing all kinds of shady, crooked tricks. And we tried to do it to Russia. We've been trying to do it to Russia, you know, like we're doing it right now. And you know how we sanction them and then we steal their money. Their money is in some bank account for us. Yeah, we're trying to do that to Iran. We already did it to Venezuela. They're doing it to our country right now. They're stripping our country out. They already sold off all of our manufacturing, all of our jobs. They sold it to China. Well, the companies in our country decided, you know, to go to China because it's cheaper and they had more people. And yeah, they're stripping us out. They're stripping out South America. They're stripping out our hemisphere. They're stripping out everything they have because they pissed it all away. They've, you know, for a century, they have been stripping out all the assets in the West. They've been stripping it all out and selling it off piece by piece. You know, like in Africa, stripping out countries one by one, stripping them out. Doing it to the Middle East. Doing it to Europe. I would imagine we're fixing to do it to Europe. Yeah, and we're in the middle of a transition. Like they say, we're on our way to a multipolar world. And that's what the meeting between Xi Jinping and Trump was. That was them negotiating what the multipolar world is going to look like. It's going to look like this. It's going to look like the West, the West is going to be a faction. Norway is going to be a faction. The GCC, the Gulf States Sovereign Fund, that's going to be a faction. And then the BRICS nations will be a faction. Norway and the Saudi, you know, if you look online and you search for the countries with the biggest sovereign wealth funds, those are the countries that we're competing with. You know, they are on the Gulf states. They're our partners now. They're not subordinate to us. They used to be at the beginning, but they've made so much money. They bought us out. They bought the equity to their stuff. They bought the equity to their land. They bought the equity to their wells. They're paid up. We owe them money. You see, we owe them money now. And it used to be that we, you know, they were subordinated to us because, you know, we bought all theirs. They needed our money. Well, now they've sold, instead, they used to sell debt to those guys, but they ran out of debt to sell, and now they've sold equity instead. They sold the Saudis, they sold them equal partner shares in America or in the West. They sold the Norwegians equal partner shares. And they just cut a deal with China for equal partner shares. Russia, equal partner shares. Iran going to be equal partner shares. It's basically, and you know, Norway and the Sauds, they're just the only ones that were smart enough to beat us at our own game. Because every other country, if you notice, you know, if they did something we didn't like, we would just put a bullet in their head and you know, do a regime change and install a dictator. But that didn't happen with the Sauds because they played ball with us, and they played ball better than we play ball, and they beat us. The Norwegians did the same thing. They played ball and they did it better than we did. That's why Norway always comes up as like, oh, you know, a socialist, you know what, like they come up as this utopia, but also you always hear how they come up as like kind kind of a an independent country that really they're not a part of our system. We don't run Norway's government. We don't run it at all. They do their own thing. We now they sell all their stuff to us, but like I said, they're equal partners. You know, as long as we get their stuff at a good price, we let them live. We let them do their thing. We sold them shares, an equal share. China spent a century to get where it is now. It took China a century. They went through opium wars. They went through weaponized drug addiction. We as the West beat those poor people to hell. We used to control China. We had butchered that whole country up, and we controlled all of it. And all the different, Germany controlled a chunk, Britain controlled a chunk. We never did. America never took any land from them. All the European countries did. Russia did. Well, China threw us out, said, get the hell out of here. We're tired of you being parasites off of sucking our life out of us, you know, hollowing us out. They threw us out, and it took them a century because they didn't want our help. They said, to hell with you. They did the same thing as Iran. They said, to hell with you, sons of bitches. You're so greedy. You want it all. You want it all. And if the country that you want everything from, if they so much as, you know, if they try to tell the West no, the West would have a bullet put in their head. And the only reason why, you know, China and Iran, and Russia are different. You know, they're huge nations. They have, you know, they're not easy. We can't just go in there and take their stuff. But China, it took them a century to build their own financial system, their own supply lines, their own this, that, the other. It took them a century to do that. And now they did it. And now they have the whip hand. Now they get to call the tune. They get to call the tune because they did. And that's why I said they built up their solar panels because they made sure that they were self-sufficient because we're crooks. Because the people that run the West are sharks. They're animals basically, and they're evil. They don't give a shit about us. They don't care about America. They don't care about white people and black people. They care about dollars and cents. They care about enslaving your ass and making money off of everything that you do. There's nothing you can do that they don't make money off of. Pretty much. They make money off of us. You know, you get a mortgage. Okay. You're just what is it? Mortgage. You're just a mortgage-backed security at that point. That's all you are as a homeowner. That's all you are. You don't own shit either. You know, stop making those payments. You'll find out real quick who owns your house. It ain't you. They give you control over your house. In return, they got your soul. They got your ass, bro. They got your ass. Because you ain't going nowhere. You're going to stay your ass in that house, and you're going to work to pay that son of a bitch off your entire life. And you remember when Trump came out and said, "Oh, well, maybe we'll do a 50-year back mortgage." Yeah, that's because we're straining under the harness. We can't survive with the 30-year backed mortgage. We can't do it. It costs too much. Everything is too damned expensive. That's why he came out and said 50-year mortgage. Makes no difference to them. You're still a slave once you get a house. You're still locked in for 30 years, 50 years. You're locked in, and you don't even own the son of a bitch. You know, I mean, chances are you ain't going to pay off your house. And if you do, you're not going to live much longer. You know, and like everybody has debt. Yeah, we're just debt slaves, man. Everybody has mountains of debt. I don't, thank God. I bet any of you that have any, you know, I mean, most everybody's in debt. That's the whole game, man. That's the whole ball of wax, is to get you into debt so that you're working to pay that debt off. They need you to be a worker bee. You know, they need you to be a worker bee. That's why they, oh, we'll pay for your college for you if you want to go to college. And they'll teach you what they want you to know. You want to be a doctor, they'll turn you into a drug dealer. You know, they control the education, they control it all, basically. They control everything minus Russia, minus China, minus Iran, Norway, and the GCC, the Gulf states. But everything else, you know, we just like hollow it all out. We hollow everything out. We just did that with Venezuela. We're trying to do that with Iran. And the choke points, you know what destroyed the British Empire, or what? I mean, I would imagine you guys know why the British Empire went down, or what the event was that took the British Empire down. It was the Suez Canal crisis. It was a crisis over a choke point. And what are we doing right now? If you guys would remind me, would refresh my memory, are we not arguing over a maritime choke point? A maritime trade route? Was that not what brought the English Empire, the British Empire down? And it's exactly what's going to bring the American Empire down. The Suez crisis, the Hormuz crisis is almost the exact same thing. Round 2 of the Middle Eastern monkey shines, Middle Eastern debacle. But isn't that crazy though? Like it never occurred to me that, yeah, the British went down over the Suez crisis, and the Hormuz, this will be known as the Hormuz crisis in the future, which is crazy. But, you know, the Suez crisis, that was a problem because Egypt was trying to, you know, the British Empire, they own the Suez Canal. Well, Egypt was trying to take the canal back and nationalize it and put it into pensions for their people. Well, the British, they cut a deal with us, transferred all their gold to Fort Knox, handed us the keys to the empire, and the Suez Canal remained in the fold. But the British didn't have the wherewithal to stop the Egyptians from taking the Suez back. But we did. We did have that control. We did have that ability. We did have that wherewithal. And we took control of it. We took the keys back. We took the keys for it. And, you know, we've stripped out everything we could now. And now we don't have the strength to carry on. We don't have the strength to continue running as a hegemonic empire. You know, that's what the deal is. Alien geek. Never heard of that. Yeah, this isn't anything new, man. It's not anything new. Central banking, bro. Central banking. That's all it is. It's the same. They've been doing this for hundreds of years. And the British weren't the first ones to do it either. They inherited it from the Dutch. Yeah, it's, you know, we've been going through this BS for a long time. No, I don't think, no, that Strait of Hormuz tax, yeah, we don't have anything to do with that. And also Iran is doing that tax in Bitcoin. So they're doing it in Bitcoin. The reason why the whole point of doing it in Bitcoin is so that America and Israel can't touch it. Because anything that's dealt with, anything that uses the dollar is just putting money in our pocket, or putting money in the international banking community's pocket. That's all. You know, because, you know, the dollar is literally debt. The American dollar money is debt. And the Iranians don't want to pay for our debt. So they're using Bitcoins just specifically so that the Jays and the elites in America And the banks, just so that they can't touch that money, they're going to use Bitcoin. Like I said, Iran is the #1 miner of Bitcoin on the planet, the #1 sovereign Bitcoin mining operation. And, you know, they're only dealing in Bitcoin or yuan for a reason. You know, I mean, the petrodollar has had its day. It's over. You know, it's finally done. The euro dollar's done. You know, we're fixing to go into Cuba because, you know, like I said, with Venezuela, it's outside of the Western system. So is Cuba. That's why we just robbed Venezuela, and that's why we're fixing to rob Cuba. Yeah, and the Jays, yeah, they're not they have loopholes for usury. See, with Christians and Muslims, you're not allowed usury is against the law or against God. You know, it's a sin in our religions. Well, the Jews have special loopholes. They can't loan shark each other, but they're allowed to loan shark us. They're allowed to loan shark anybody but their own people. That's why Jays are historically bankers. You know, the Rothschilds, those are, you know what a benefactor is, right? You know, like old noblemen, they would have a banker. Oh, you know, get in touch with you know, they would make a deal and they would say, you know, call upon my benefactor. So if the nobleman owed you money, you didn't go to the nobleman to get your money. He didn't have any money. You went to his banker to draw on his banker, his benefactor. The Rothschilds are literally the bankers of our noblemen, basically. They're the Rothschilds, they're just the people at the top's bitch the Rothschilds handle their money. You know, the Rothschilds, you know, help them, you know, and the Rothschilds uh, operate the credit cards and operate the loan sharking for the people, the West, the Christian West, and whatever. They do all the evil usury for the people that are in charge. Because it's you know, and they've always done that since the Crusades. I think the Jays were the people that ran the banks in Europe because it's illegal for us to do it. So it is kind of like, yeah, the Jays, they're not the problem, actually, really. You know, they're just, you know, first of all, the population in Israel, they're in the exact same boat. They're in our boat. They're in the boat with us. They are in our boat. You know, they're just people. They're just the, you know, the masses. They don't get a say in anything either. And you know, it's the same with us. You know, we have an elite that runs the show, and they have their little empire. And the Israeli, the government in Israel is just it's literally just an office, or it's like an arm of the American government. Israel is. That's all it is. It's an arm of the American empire. You know, and the whole point of it is so that when Israel does stuff, we get mad at Israel. We don't get mad at we don't get mad at our politicians. That's why Israel is there. Also, I guess apparently they did Rothschild a favor because Europe was anti-Semitic. They had a real problem with Jays. So Rothschild, as a you know, as kind of a favor to Rothschild, we gave them Israel because he was looking out for his people. And the same people that run our Fed are the Wald, I think it's the Walden family or the Wallen family. Those people funded Hitler, and they funded the Russian Revolution, as well as us, as well as America. They paid for the Russian Revolution. They quietly bankrolled the Russian Jays, and then they bankrolled Hitler. They bankrolled him too. For they wanted the fascists to fight the communists. While they pay, and you guys know that I don't, or some of you should know that in World War II, we sold all the weapons. We sold Russia the weapons, and we shipped it to them on trains and stuff. We sold the Germans the weapons. So really, World War II, that was made to happen, or that was allowed to happen because the people in charge made a lot of money off of World War II. They made a lot of money off of World War II. And the way they did it was they funded the communists, the Bolsheviks, and they funded Hitler. And then Hitler, and just like they assumed would happen, Hitler and the Russians went toe to toe. Hitler went toe to. They didn't. I don't think they thought Hitler would go toe to. And they also, I think they funded Mussolini too, but I don't think they intended on. Maybe they did. Maybe they did assume that Hitler would take the continent of Europe. But, they funded Hitler. They funded the Spanish Civil War. They funded the Italian fascist government. They funded the Russian communists, and they funded the Nazis. They didn't fund the Chinese though. They never did. They didn't fund that, and that's why China stands alone. China went through all that bullshit, all that rigmarole, just so that they didn't have to bow to us, so that they could stand on their own peacefully and do it. And they're not getting pressured into doing shit from us. Vietnam, that was just like they say about the military industrial complex. Vietnam was just a war so we could sell our weapons. It was just an excuse for Raytheon, Boeing, and Northrop Grumman to sell weapons to us. Same thing with Desert Storm. Same thing with every war every one of these regime change wars, I guess, except for maybe North Korea. But every one of these regime change wars, we started to make money off of the war, to sell weapons. I mean, these are really despicable people that run our society, our civilization. Really despicable people. I mean, and they don't give a damn about us. I can assure you of that. Not only that, we're not having kids. But, that's a problem, though. That's a problem. Well, the thing, though, because we're not having kids, yeah, they're just going to replace us with robots. Like, we're not going to have jobs, really. We're not productive. We're not having children. We're not productive at all. And it's kind of their fault, too. They're the ones that put this liberal bullshit down our throat, shoved it down our throat. But, and they, basically America is all tapped out, just like Britain was all tapped out after World War II. Britain was all tapped out after World War I and World War II. Then they couldn't do it anymore, so they chalked it up to us. They threw it to us. Well, we're tapped out now. Look what's going on with England. That's what's that is going to happen to us. What's going on in England, which is scary. Or maybe not. Maybe we'll get lucky because now they know what happens. Like all the people, the immigrants that came into America, that was absolutely, they made that happen. Kamala Harris, she goes, don't come. Meanwhile, they were in those people's country saying, no, come on over. We need you. Come through. Yeah, absolutely. And same thing with Europe. They were trying to replace an unproductive population of white people, Europeans. The only thing is that no matter what, whoever you send into America, they don't have kids. So now that's why they're leaving America, because they shit where they eat. They've ruined America. So now they're leaving because they can't import people because the peoples don't have kids. As soon as they get here, they don't have any kids. If they import young people, They get here and they have no children. So and there's no place in the world where anybody is really above replacement except for Central Africa, like the Congo. Every other place in the world is below replacement. So that's why they're leaving America, because they can't even import people now. Because our society is so messed up. You know, suicide is now, for the first time in history, one of the top 10 leading causes of deaths. Suicide. For the first time ever, we're killing ourselves. You know, to the point where suicide is number 10. And the top 10 death ways to die in the West or on the planet, suicide is number 10 for the first time. That's why they're leaving. They're leaving because people are in their cars screaming at their phone about how they can't afford rent, how they're living in their car. Because men are blowing their brains out at an amazing clip. It's ridiculous. Same thing with Canada, same thing with Mexico, same thing with Europe. Everything they touch dies. Just I mean, it's awful. I mean, like they did to us when they sold, you know, like they pawned all of our shit. They pawned all our jobs and our manufacturing, sent it over to China, because so they could make money cheaper, so they could make more money, because there's cheaper costs over there. They don't have to pay the people as much. And you know what China did? They're smart, man. They said, you know what? We got a shitload of people and they'll work for cheap. The only thing is, though, you have to follow our rules and you have to let us use the technology that you're using. Whatever you build in our country, you have to let us make our own. Huawei, they make iPhone knockoffs. They actually use iPhone parts and everything to make phones. They bite our technology to sell to their own people for free. They have figured it. They have been so clever. They have set up their own independent system, but not only that, they still get our stuff. They still get everything. They don't have to come up with the stuff that we have. They just get it from us. And in exchange, we get cheap manufacturing. We get to use their stuff and manufacture really cheap. You know, and they've just been stripping out America year after year, all these rusty old factories and stuff. Yeah, that's them stripping it out, selling it off. You know, making money where, you know, the equity that we have left in our country, and they're selling everything off. And what they're doing is they're running up the debt. So, and of course, you guys know how the mafia works. I'm sure you guys have seen Goodfellas, right? What do they do with that when they take over that restaurant? What do they do after they take over that restaurant? They run up the debt, and then they burn the son of a bitch down to collect the insurance. That's what they're doing to us right now. They've run up the debt, and now they're burning the motherfucker down as they leave. Isn't that some shit? Isn't that some shit? what a sunny, cheerful reality. You know, like that's what's happening, my dudes. They're literally a mafia. They're a bunch of crooks, man. And the Chinese and the Iranians, they're not stupid. They said, yeah, we're not playing that game with you crooks. Norwegians, the Arabs, they said the same. They said, yeah, we're not playing. Nah, we'll deal with you. We'll let you have the resources. But nah, it's still going to be ours. And we're going to have our own sovereign wealth fund. We're going to have our own pile of money set aside. You're not allowed to have it. Yeah, they busted us out. They're busting us out as we speak. I mean, and does it fit? Do you believe me, Auto Hoax? Do you believe me? Does it sound plausible to you? I want to hear what you guys have to say. Does that sound about right? Now, does it kind of make sense now? Like, oh, I see. We're never going to pay down the debt. Not as long as they're in charge. No, they're running up the debt so that they can secure hard commodity resources, gold, and all sorts of other resources. They're using the built up equity of America. They're busting it out so that they can hoard more resources, more gold, more this, more that. That's what I mean. That's what the name of the game is. The entire name of the whole game is to who can accrue the who can essentially win. It's Monopoly. They're playing Monopoly, and you know how Monopoly ends. Somebody wins. Somebody gets everything. And that's what they're doing. That's what they've done with Europe. That's what they've done with every country in Europe. That's what they've done with every country in South America. They just did Venezuela and Argentina. They've done it to Canada. They've done it to Mexico. They've done it to Japan. They've done it to Korea. They've done it to they've done it all over. The only places that and they're all tapped out. All of them are below replacement rate. So now they're leaving. They're going to maybe Africa or something. And when what we would do is we would take over a country, and like we would eat the seeds instead of planting a tree. You take over a country and it has seed corn. We take it over. It's like taking over a farm and it has seed grain for the next year, or then the next season. We show up and we eat all the seed grain and then leave. The Chinese with their Belt and Road Initiative, no, they show up and they plant those seeds. And now Trump went to China to cut a deal with them. Part of that deal was us getting in on their planted seeds, saying, yeah, we destroyed everything that we have, but we have a lot of money. Can we buy into your Belt and Road Initiative? Will you sell us a partner share so that we can? And China obliged, said, yeah, sure, absolutely. And China, they sold our debt, the debt that we ran up, 38 trillion. Yeah, China, they bought all that debt from us, and then they sold it to these small countries that they did Belt and Road Initiatives in. Like they played a smart game. They are not idiots. And they went around and planted trees. You notice how countries that we bust out hate our guts, man. They hate our guts. They don't hate China's guts. They hate our guts because we steal their resources, start revolutions, massacre their people, butcher them, steal all their shit, and then when it's all stolen, or and there are no more people left to run the mines and stuff, then we leave. Simple as that. And that's why you always hear politicians like, oh, well, what we can't leave there. What if China's just going to move in? They're afraid of China moving in, because once China gets in, they treat those people better, and then we'll never get back in, because we just busted out and steal all their shit. So if we leave a place, we're allowing China to come in and make us look bad, more or less. Nobody wants our shit anymore, though. They've totally. I mean, America's over. It's over. It is. The Constitution, it's over. I mean, Cenk getting blocked from the United Kingdom yesterday, that was perfect. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's over. And they, like I said, ICE is a private entity. It's a company basically. Yeah, ICE is literally. I mean, like I said, they were doing beta testing for Palantir, and so was January 6th. That was a beta test. Anybody find it weird, like that they're able to hunt these people down? ICE, they go and find immigrants, hunt them down, and rouse them up and get rid of them. Yeah, that's because they're using Palantir's insane technology. And really, they already have the social credit score. It's called Twitter, my dudes. It's called Twitter. It's called Doge. The Doge thing, that was to get little tech's foot in the door so that they could get everybody's information, so that they could start. It's the beginnings of a social credit score. Same thing as Twitter. They allowed Elon Musk to buy Twitter because they wanted to bust it out and use it, sell the data and use the data. But all these years that we've been using Twitter, the last few years, yeah, they're just building cases on us. They're just getting all of our information. I feel like an idiot, kind of like a dupe. And I knew about Meta crawler, or the Meta verse too, or like Mastodon and shit. I have a Mastodon, and I've been using X, like I've been like saying a lot of subversive stuff. It's kind of scary, like no joke. Oh yeah, absolutely. They inject our kids with poison and stuff. Yeah, that's the point. We're guinea pigs. We're guinea pigs. Gaza, they're guinea pigs. That was to test out the same technology. Palantir's social credit score and their insane pre-crime bullshit. All these different things that have been, all these authoritarian things that have been popping off around the world. Even the Ukraine war, that's a Palantir beta test. The UK, Palantir beta test. ICE, Palantir beta test. The border, Trump closed the border, Palantir beta test. Venezuela, Palantir beta test. And I mean, life is going to get a lot worse for us. The quality of life is fixing to go down quite dramatically. And like freedom of speech, it's bullshit. We don't even have freedom of speech anymore. Remember the freedom of reach argument? Remember that conversation we had? Yeah, that was Palantir. That was the people in charge taking away our rights. They took away our right to freedom of speech. They say, yeah, well, you can have freedom. You can say whatever you want, but you don't have freedom of reach. You don't get to it doesn't mean we have to amplify it. Yeah, and that's what they did with X. They said, yeah, sure, you can use X. You can say what you want. Just so they could collect data on us, so they could use it against us, not so that we could change anything. And honestly, I've always wondered, why is it that I haven't been able to get over like 250 followers on X? Well, now I know why, because I'm not in like everybody that has 50,000 followers, yo, man, they're paid shills. Every single one of them. Pearl, she's a shill. Yeah, she cut a deal with the people in charge. She's playing ball with them. Nick, he's playing ball with them. Alex Jones, he's playing ball with them. Every single person, basically, that goes viral is totally, they're on the payroll. Anybody that gets rich quick, yeah, they're on the payroll. They've been approached. They've gotten the call. I mean, they can't afford to, they decide who is successful and who isn't. If you're not performing a service for them, then you don't get success. It's that simple. If you're not performing a service, then you don't get success. You don't get to, like politicians, politicians, they run for an office, like a local office, and they get approached by somebody, and that person asks them, hey, do this for me. And they get a promotion if they do what they're asked and they do it well. That's what the Epstein files were for. That's what they showed, is that, that all of this stuff is, they're compromised networks, and that nobody succeeds with success is literally hinged on whether or not you carry water for the regime, for the people in charge. You don't get a promotion unless you do their work. You do what they want you to do. And as you do what they want you to do, then they start inviting you to parties. They start inviting you to do some drugs, to do this, to do that. So that if you ever decide that you want to tell somebody something, they have compromise. They have you by the stones, the short and curlies. That's what IPOs are, initial stock offerings. Yeah, once you start a business and you start making a lot of money, or you come up with a good idea, they come to you and they say, hey, made a pretty nice invention there. It'd be nice to, sure is a nice life you made for yourself. You should go public. It'd be kind of a shame to lose all this. Maybe you should go public. Maybe you should let some private investors get a piece of your company. Maybe you should take on a partner or two. Pretty whack. You know, all these, anybody who goes viral, yeah, they're in on it basically. Pretty much, man. They're kind of in on it. For them, I mean, a lot of them are anyway. Like Pearl, there's no doubt in my mind that she's a part of the Borg. She's a part of it, you know? Because I remember when she first got on X and she was like, oh, this X thing, it's so easy, this blah, blah, blah. Yeah, they approached her. She probably did some of it herself, and then they approached her and they said, hey, you know, you want to do this for a living? And then they boost her thing. Like, I can't get more. I haven't been able to get over 250 followers on X. There's nothing I can do. There's no possible way. There's nothing that I'll get a few followers and then I'll lose them. I've just had constant gaining them, losing them, gaining them, losing them. And the people that aren't carrying the regime message, you've heard about it, where people say they're getting unsubscribed from somebody. Yeah, those people aren't a part of it. And it's pretty lame, really, you know, kind of lame, not gonna lie. You know, and basically they're just telling stories. They're just telling us bedtime stories, lullabies, so that we don't revolt, so that we don't do anything drastic. You know, that's what politicians' job is. That's what these shills' job is. You know, and politicians, they're literally WWE wrestlers. They're actors. And they get promotions depending on if they can tell a good story and get us to swallow what the top wants to do, what the people in charge want to do. They have done a poor job with Iran of getting us to swallow it. But, you know, that's their job, is to come up with, and remember, and Marco Rubio told everybody that Israel did it. Yeah, he's blaming it on Israel because there is no justification. So he blamed it on Israel, which is just us. But he got you to stop hating them and Trump, or at least for a second. Mark Levin, he's a part of the thing. He's like right-hand man to Trump, I guess. But all these people, yeah, they're just they're just doing kabuki theater so that we don't listen to people that are for real, so that we don't get ideas and do something drastic, because there are things we can do that they can't stop. But, you know, the news and elections, yeah, that's just to get us to, that's to give us just enough hope that we actually can change things so that we don't do anything drastic. And the rest, they decide, and I've said this before, you know, they decide what they want to do, and then they tell Donald Trump to figure it out, or they tell the politicians, you got to figure out how to sell it. This is what we're doing. Now you got to figure out some way to make these people accept it. That's their job. And I've been saying that for a while, you know, that, hey, they do what they want and then they worry about it later. Simple as that. And they make up something on the fly, or they throw out some red meat, you know, to get us a red herring. I mean, the Epstein files, yeah, they did that as a distraction. And also they want us to know how things work. They want us to know. They showed us, they pulled the curtain back and said, hey, look, check this out. We were meant to know what was in the Epstein files. We were meant to know what was in John Podesta's emails. All of these things, these whistleblowers and these file dumps, bro, they're giving that. They are giving that. We're meant to have that. It's not disinformation. It's true, but they have all of the dirt in the Epstein files. Yeah, you know, it's a blackmail network. You know, they're getting everybody to do evil shit or nasty shit, so that they can't tell us what's going on. And also, I think, you know, the Epstein files was a weapon. They used it as blackmail. They said, well, If you don't do what we ask you to do, we'll throw out these files and tell everybody all of your dirty secrets. You know, so obviously, you know, these people that are in the Epstein files ran afoul. You know, they kind of ran afoul of the people in charge because, you know, we were shown, you know, we weren't, yeah, we just got shown everything behind the scenes, or at least what they wanted us to see. At least what they wanted us to know how this thing works. They wanted us to know that they blackmail and this and that. And, you know, and Trump, he's a part of it. He's a part of it. He's always been a part of it. His job is not to make America great again. It's literally to strip out and hollow out America for these corporations and for these billionaires. Or, well, the Rothschilds and the Walden Group and the Mellon Corporation or Mellon Group or whatever it's called. There's a bunch of these private, different private organizations that are in charge. BlackRock, that they're the main one. They're in charge basically. They run the show. They've been running the show since the 80s. They invented they invented ETFs. I guess they went through Barclays and invented an ETF, and then and they've been selling those ETFs for years now. And no, I think it was the thing that what I forget what called the mortgage-backed securities that caused the crash. The subprime loan schemes. They invented that, BlackRock. Larry Fink invented that. That's why they're in charge, because they're the new Banker J is BlackRock. They're basically the modern version of the Rothschilds in the 19th century. It's BlackRock. And if you want, like I said, if you know, Google, when they were small, they did a deal with the devil. They cut a deal with BlackRock. BlackRock bought a part, you know, they buy every big corporation, every corporation on our stock market, their board, you have to let the bankers, you have to let them have a board seat on your, you know, first of all, you have to go public, and then you have to let BlackRock buy shares. You have to allow them to have seats on your board. You know, the iPhone, yeah, no, you know, that was military technology that was given to Apple, so that Apple was allowed to blow up and go and get and become the most valuable company in the world. Steve Jobs, they picked him. He was their guy, one of their salesmen. He's literally, you know, they have it reminds me of Cyberpunk 2077, where they have corpo shills, corpo actors, they have government actors. No, they have they have banker actors, they have politician actors, and they have military actors, basically. And you know, the iPhone, that was military technology, and that the military didn't really need anymore, so they gave it to Apple, and they said, "Hey, make this phone. The people are going to love it." They make the phone, and Steve Jobs becomes rich. You know, like that's all of these companies, even Elon Musk, man, they gave him the technology. Basically, they gave him SpaceX. They gave him the money to buy X. He leveraged his Tesla shares, and then they gave him the money. You know, you guys notice that none of these billionaires have hard money. They don't have any resources. They have invisible figment money. The people in charge have all the resources. But the billionaires that the billionaires, let's tax the billionaires. Yo, the billionaires, they're a part of the whole thing. Like, they're literally given their position. Jeff Bezos was given Amazon, pretty much. That was allowed to happen. That's how all this stuff works. It's allowed to take place. And if Elon Musk were to cross them, they would devalue Tesla. It would all tank. They would just destroy his companies because they own his companies, and they can devalue the stock whenever they see fit. They can do whatever they want. They own his ass. They own Bezos's ass. Yeah, sure, they get a lot of money and stuff, but that's because they've done some hella evil shit. You know, Elon, you know, Peter Thiel is the devil incarnate, but Elon, he's done his dirt too. You know, he did the Doge thing. Yeah, that was him, you know, putting not viruses, but putting scanners and crawlers into the government social security rolls so that they could get to harvest all of our information. Yeah, that's why Doge was done. And they sold us, they said, hey, we need the information in the social security system. Okay, what kind of story are we going to tell these people to get them to eat it, to swallow it? Ah, I see. We'll tell them that we're trying to pay down their debt, and we need to look through the voter rolls. We need to look through all the rolls, and they'll beg us to do Doge. Sure as shit, man. We begged them to do Doge, and that was literally them. That was letting the fox into the hen house. Same thing with X, man. I wish that I never got on X, bro, but it's like they played such a sweet bit of music to get you on there. Oh, Elon bought it. Oh, and now it's freedom of speech, this and that. Even though, yeah, you don't have freedom of reach, nobody sees your stuff. Nobody sees anybody's comments. Really. It's just to get you to tell them what you feel and what you think. And it's ammunition for them. It's a way for them to starve you to death, basically. You know, more or less. If you cross them, now they've got dirt on you. And you don't get successful unless you give them dirt. You're not allowed to be successful. You're not allowed to get rich unless you give them compromised material. You have to give it to them. Either that or you don't get rich. You don't get rich. That's the deal. That is the deal. You don't get a following. You don't get none of that stuff. You know, they have control of it. They own that stuff, you know, and TikTok was run by China. That's why they had to get China to sell it to them, because they don't have any control over China. They have zero control over China. They can't make China do anything. They can't make them do anything. They're purely self-sufficient. They don't need the Middle East. They don't need money. They don't need electricity. They don't need resources. They don't even need oil, you know, because they have solar panels. They have clean energy. They don't even need the Middle East. And they'll continue right on trucking. That's why it was imperative that TikTok either be canceled. That was censorship. That was our government saying, we can't allow that. And they say, ooh, in China, they're not allowed to use Twitter. They do a lockdown on Twitter. Bro, it's projection. That's what we live under. China comes up with TikTok, and our government and these banker hunts, they don't have any access to it. So you know what they did? What they say China or Iran did. Ooh, Iran won't allow America in it. They won't allow Twitter in there because, you know, they don't want their people using our stuff. They don't want their people to have freedom of speech. It's actually our government that doesn't want us to have freedom of speech. And that's why they forced China to sell them a majority stake in TikTok. My dude, we are up shit's creek pretty much, man. I mean, we're in the jaws now, bro. They got their jaws around our head now. It's too late. We can't pull our head out. That's it. You know, head squarely in the jaws. Yeah, and they're, you know, I mean, we're on the path, man. We're going down, or you know, they're taking our quality of life is fixing to go down. They're fixing to roll out this social credit score. They're about to roll it out. Yeah, all these things, all the stuff that we were, and you know, they want us to revolt. That's the point. Dude, they're begging us to revolt. Why do you think they did the Epstein files? Why do you think they just banned Cenk from going to the UK? Why do you think, you know, they allow Nick Fuentes to talk? Why do you think they allow anybody to talk? Like, they're trying to get us to riot and revolt so they can take our rights, so that they can take our guns, so that they can take our freedom. That's the point, my dudes. That is the point. They are provoking us deliberately, trying to get us to step out of line. Remember what they did with the J6 people, bro? They hunted down grandmothers. That was a test. Not only that, but those were CIA operatives that started that. CIA operatives started that shit. Remember, they let people in? Yeah, our government is not our friend. They let us in so that they let those people in so that they could arrest them. Remember, and Nick Fuentes, he gets a subpoena and goes and does a deposition. What do you think they talked about in that deposition, fellers? And isn't it funny that all of a sudden Nick goes big as soon as he has a deposition with our government? All of a sudden Rumble lets him on. All of a sudden he blows up. I mean, his case was just squashed before, like it was like right around. And Charlie Kirk, I wonder why he was assassinated, why he was put to death. Because he was most certainly taken out by bankers and stuff. They had Charlie whacked. Because they didn't have any compromise on him, and he wouldn't play ball. He wouldn't take the hint when it came to Israel. It's scary, isn't it? It's scary when you think some of this what I just said didn't occur to me till I just said it. Like when I said with TikTok, yeah, that did not occur to me until I just said that. And then as I was saying, I'm like, holy shit, yeah. China had to let these crooked sharks into TikTok, or they weren't going to let us use it anymore because we saw too much. And I kind of feel dumb for not using TikTok now. You know, I swallowed the propaganda. Hook, line, and sinker. Hook, line, and sinker. I swallowed that bullshit. You know, and what's crazy is China, they're like China, Iran, Russia, they're the only ones that deal with us as a people squarely. The masses, our government does not deal with us squarely. These bankers, they do not deal with, they don't give a shit about us. They want us to die. You know, like go ahead and revolt so we can take everything from you. So we can take your guns, we can take everything. Being friendly with our neighbors. What are you talking? I mean, it's not like the guns could help us anyways. You know, that's not the way out. Not even close. They would just cut us down like chaff. We would just get destroyed. I mean, look what they did to Gaza, man. They're killing. I mean, that was them dialing in their sights, doping their scope. You know, I guess they have some super high tech new technology that hunts people out, you know, that finds people for them, you know, so that they don't have to go door to door like they used to catch people. They don't have to do that anymore, apparently. Yeah, and all of these different, like I said, ICE, it's private. And another thing too, you know, everybody wonders why. I've heard people say over the years, why are our prisons private? Bro, they make money off of us no matter what. If you buy gold, they make money off of you. You know, there's only one way. It's Bitcoin. That's literally the only thing that they don't have control of. That's the only way to combat them is with Bitcoin. Even gold, you need a place to store it. You have to deal with their custodial networks. You know, they have companies that store gold, or banks or whatever. You have to, either that or you have to be a millionaire or billionaire that can create a bunker or run off to another. I mean, but it's a lot of weight though. That's the thing with gold is you can't move it. That was the whole point of Bitcoin, was to get out from under the bankers, the international banking system, because they're just thieves. They running up our debt, busting our country out that they have no allegiance to whatsoever. They have zero allegiance to And that's why they bring in all the Chinese people to go to our colleges, because they're crooks, and they're trying to amass as much hard resources as they can, like like Monopoly. So yeah, of course, and China has their own money and their own resources. It's a income, it's a stream of income for the people up top. So they're like, hell yeah, we'll educate your people for you. Hell yeah, we'll do that. Same thing with all the migrants. We're not breeding, we're not having children. So they brought in migrants, but like I said, even the migrants don't have children once they get here. But like the deep throat with Nixon didn't play ball. Nixon didn't play ball, so he didn't get killed, thank goodness for him. But John F. Kennedy got whacked. John F. Kennedy didn't want to play ball, so they whacked him. They knocked him off. But all this stuff makes perfect sense now. The deep throat stuff, yeah, that was just the Borg. That was like the system. Just they didn't have compromising material on Nixon, but they didn't need compromising material. They got their thugs in the CIA to get caught in the Watergate motel so they could hang it around Nixon's neck. These people are underhanded, man. Super underhanded. Evil, downright evil. Yeah, they honestly did not think that Iran would close the strait. They honestly didn't. I guess they didn't understand, how like situation we were in, or I don't know, they misjudged something, but like the BRICS stuff, yeah, they're taking over. We're kind of screwed. They're taking over, and I think that's why the Epstein files and all that stuff came out. That's why they're busting out Venezuela. They're trying to bust out Iran so that they can get the strongest position before he went to China to deal with China and cut a deal. They're trying to get their strongest position. It's crazy though, like Elon Musk, all these billionaires, yeah, they're just pawns. They're literally just the chess piece. They don't actually move themselves. No, they're a chess piece. They go where they're told to go. They come out with products they're told to come out with. The military industrial complex, it literally comes up with all these inventions because they sell weapons for money. Like I said, war is how that was their model. Their model was to start a war and then make money off of the guns, make money off of the weaponry. And then after the war is settled and everybody's dead, they rebuild everything and make money off of the rebuild. See what I'm saying? They blow shit up, and then they make money off of the bombs to blow everything up. And then after everybody's dead and it's time to rebuild, they make money off of rebuilding too. It's like the Rothschilds always did. They were known for funding both sides of a war. They funded the Allies and Napoleon. They funded literally the Axis in World War II and the Allies. World War I, same thing. And I think all of it, I think the top of the heap is there's a bank in Switzerland, the International Bank, that's up top of all of it. BlackRock is an arm. It's like there's a financial industrial complex, military industrial complex, and a technological industrial complex. The TIC is new tech, little tech. Palantir, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, the PayPal mafia. That is the technological industrial complex. The financial industrial complex is the Fed, Deutsche Bank, the big banks. They're all a part of the financial, our stock market, all of our futures, all of our commodities, all the commodities in London, the London, what is it, the FTSE or whatever, all these different markets, they're all except for, I guess, China's, I would imagine, but they're all part of the financial industrial compound. And then you have the military industrial, it's like a triangle, 3 points, like the three nodes that control everything. And really, the military industrial complex, it's just a collection of weapons manufacturers. The financial industrial complex is like Israel, or no, Israel is a part of the military industrial complex. But all Miriam Adelson, they're all a part of the financial complex. So is George Soros. And yeah, they all work in tandem, but Raytheon and stuff, that's why we start a war every few years, a meaningless war. That's why we went into Vietnam, because those companies needed money. We have to go to war every generation because those defense contractors need money. They need to make some money. So, and when a war is about to start, things change. They show their hand. They start, like, if you can look at where contracts with munitions go. Like with Ukraine, there was a buildup with munitions and ordnance. With Iran, there was a buildup of munitions and ordnance. With Vietnam, there was a buildup of munitions and ordnance. You know what I mean? Like they seed the ground before they start the war. They get things prepped and ready. That's what they do. They start regime change. They do regime changes and stuff, and that's so they can get resource. They can steal resources from other people, other countries, other oligarchies. All these different factions and countries. They're just oligarchies. They're just they're regions that have a ruling elite, and we either deal with that ruling elite or we knock them off. So that's our thing. And the Strait of Malacca, that's why we own Japan, we own all of those Asian countries. China isn't going to fight it. They don't want to fight us. They've already won. They're just waiting for us to acknowledge it, or waiting for everything to settle down. But all of these different choke points, like I said, the British Empire went down because of a choke point, a crisis with a choke point. Well, we're going down right now because of a crisis with a choke point. And I guess really it's multipolar because there's choke points all over the world. There's the Strait of Malacca, there's the Strait of Hormuz, and there are other trade routes and choke points. And each one of those trade routes and choke points has its own little ruling elite, its own regional rulers. And if they don't play ball with us, we knock them off. The smart ones, though, like the Saudis and like the Norwegians, they play the game and they do it well, and they get their, like, they're independent. They have their own, like Norway has its own sovereign wealth fund. They're a partner with the international bankers, just like Saudis are. They were able to buy us out. They bought their own. If they were a slave, they bought their freedom, basically. Same thing with Norway. They bought their freedom. So now, they're all partners. And every one of those regional air, like the Suez Canal, the Hormuz Strait, Strait of Malacca, that's what a multipolar world is regional factions. Because right now, or we had the strength to get those regional players in line, or just butcher them, kill them if they don't want to play ball. Well, now we don't have the strength. So now all of these regional factions, like Iran, they finally said, oh, wait a second, they don't have the strength to do this anymore. Yeah, we're shutting down the strait, you jackasses. That now we're gonna take back control of our choke point. And it was just a matter of time. That's what they mean by multipolar world, is like, we don't have control over the trade routes anymore, basically. And Iran, that was the first shoe to drop. It's now a multipolar world where Iran is, they're a player in the world. They're going to be, and they're in the top 5 most powerful. They're independent of us, whereas all the rulers of Europe, they're under the bankers' thumbs. They're under their thumbs, whereas Iran, Russia, China, they're not under their thumbs. And Norway and the Saudis, they're technically partners, I believe. But they're all in cahoots. against us, basically. We are their debt slaves. We're their debt slaves. We're mortgage-backed securities. We are their faithful slaves that pay back their that pay them, basically, that pay off their debts and stuff. Like, I mean, that's what we're doing when you buy a house. You're kind of just you're working for them to collect the resources. They really own the property. They really own your house. And either, and even if you pay it off, eventually you die. So really, you're a 40 acres and a mule guy. You're allowing them to make money off of property. Basically. Without us, they wouldn't be able to make money off of a lot of the commodities and a lot of the hard assets. Like they're turning hard assets into, like, we pay their interest, basically. We pay their interest. Because it doesn't, if you have hard assets, if there's nobody there to pay the interest, there's nobody there to pay the interest, then it's not worth anything. The hard asset isn't worth anything at all. But that's the deal is, we are their servants. We work and we pay, we collect their resources for them, and we, because that's the name of the game, is to accrue resources, to accrue gold, to accrue, salt, and, all kinds of, or to accrue minerals and resources, basically. And like the iPhone, yeah, and Apple, that they were given technology and told how to present it to us. Social media companies, yeah, they're literally their data collection software. It's to get us, they give us the it's like giving somebody an empty house and letting that person furnish the house. They've given us something and we've furnished it for them. They've given us an empty resume or an empty sheet of paper asking questions, and we gave them back an answered sheet of paper. That's why they let us have computers, let us have the internet, so that, they can tap into our microphones, tap into our cameras, watch us, collect data on us. It's pretty bleak. But yeah, Nick is definitely, he's a Fed, but so is everybody else, knowing or unknowing. Either you know that you're working for them, or you're just a duck that does what they want you to do without them even telling you. But Nick, they subpoenaed him. He definitely cut a deal. Absolutely, he cut a deal. I hate to say that, but he cut a deal. That's why he's doing so good. They don't give a shit if he hates or if he talks about Jews. He gets to look big and he gets to make money and be a tough guy because he has this big show. And maybe he is gay, or maybe he does have it's definitely an act. Definitely an act. But I think because he had a show and stuff, that's why they cut a deal, cut him in. They cut him in because he had a following. And really he's good business for them, because they want nothing more than the left and the right to be at each other's throats trying to kill each other. Because if we end up doing a civil war or there's a revolt, they're going to take all of our rights and turn us into real slaves. Pretty much. I mean, we're already slaves, man. We don't already. I mean, I'm not saying that, that, oh, you should just kill yourself, like life isn't worth living. I'm not saying that at all. But like, it's good to know. And once you know, you can play the game. You can beat them at their own game. Because like the stock market, that's still hot, and they need it to be hot for them to continue to make their money. They need that to continue being the hottest stock market. That's why Trump talks about it. And like people that have hard assets right now, they benefit from what's going on. It's the people that don't have hard assets that are getting screwed. Although I don't really have very many hard assets, but I also don't have any debt. But that's the whole point of this whole facade, is to get you in the system paying debt. That's why everybody has debt. That's why college, that's why they offer free school, or they offer to pay for your school if you go into debt. No, that's just, it is what it is kind of deal. It is what it is. Scary as all hell, though, isn't it? I mean, it's not a fun thought. And yeah, like in Donald Trump, his job is to strip out America and for him to make the rich and the bankers as much money off of us and our stuff. You know, like that's literally his job. He's been a part of the Epstein thing the whole time. And he's doing exactly what they want him to do. Same thing with Netanyahu. They have told him what his job is, and his job is to beta test Palantir technology while he sells stuff, and while he, you know, goes to China and negotiate. He's doing exactly what they wanted him to do. He's making them money. You know, everything he does isn't for our benefit. Nothing is for our benefit. He's not there for our benefit. He's not there to make America better or anything. He's there to bust it out. He's literally Tommy and what's his name in Goodfellas, Ray Liotta and Joe Pesci. He's busting out the restaurant. That's what Trump is doing right now. Him and the rest of those thugs, the rest of the mafia. I mean, and really the thing that the bankers run, it is basically the exact same thing as the mafia. And in fact, the mafia, they are a part of the system. Absolutely. Because, you know, they make money the legal way by the laws, but they're not going to not make money through illegal ways. They just can't do that with the government. So they do it with the mafia. The mafia is totally hand in hand with the government. Absolutely. The people that go to prison are the people that break the rules, you know, that kill a cop or whatever. You know what I mean? Like they step out of line and they go to prison or get killed. But you're either an asset or you're a liability. Jeffrey Epstein was an asset until he was a liability, and then they had him whacked. King Faisal, dude was a liability. They had him whacked. Gaddafi became a liability, had him whacked. He was trying to do a Pan-African currency or something, so they took him out. They had him knocked off. Same thing with all these. And why do you think they're talking about Turkey right now? Yeah, they would like to bust Turkey out. The Greater Israel is just a facade, man. It's how they have sold it to the Israeli people. Hey, we're going to expand Israel and make it this big country. And that's why they don't say it over here in our news. But if you read their news, Cenk thinks he's so slick because he goes, oh, you can find out what the Israelis really think by reading Israeli propaganda or Israeli news. Yeah, because they're telling those people a different story to get them to swallow what they're living under. Because they're living like terrible in Israel. The housing, the standard, it's awful. It's a third world country, but they need those people there so that they can carry on the fiction that, oh yeah, it's just a country. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. You know, and they're butchering the Ukrainians, and they're going to replace the Ukrainians too. They're just going to marry off all the Ukrainian women, or they're going to bring them over here and let us marry them, basically. It's crazy, to say the least. Crazy. In Japan, you know, Japan was a big deal. It was a big part of like this money laundering and this money cycle that they have. Japan was a big part of that. You know, they made it possible. All the, like the petrodollar and all that stuff, they made it possible through, I forget what they call it. I forget what they call it. Anyway, I'm gonna take a break. Actually, I'm thinking I'm gonna just like no, I might do like a half an hour and then come back for the Nick Fuentes. But you know what? Actually, I think I'm gonna end this stream and then restart it. You know, in like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. That way, it's separate. You know, it's not one big long stream. Because I kind of would like to get clips. You know, get clips from last bit. But anyway, you know, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and gonna go ahead and close out this stream, and I'll start a new one for Nick's stream. How's that sound? I do hope you guys enjoyed the little crash course in the international banking industry. It's pretty bleak for sure, but anyway, I'll be back here shortly.